Well, as I said early in the year, I really felt it was going to take 6 to 8 games in the league to try to figure out where everybody was because of the bizarre scheduling. And I haven't changed my mind on that, nor have I changed it on how good the league is. It was good to be able to bounce back and actually play very well. A large percentage of that game against Wisconsin. Got a couple days to prepare again for ourselves this week. We've had some good practices, and that's been really good. And I think we're getting a little better play out of Gabe, a little better play out of Aaron, a lot better play out of Rocket. That's been a big positive. But the league right now is so good, and yet we're still in a place where some teams have played 4 or 5 home games, some teams have played 2 or 3 home games. So it's very hard for media, fans, even players to figure out where anybody's at right now. So I'm looking at this as kind of a separation week, one way or another. We're either going to win some games and separate ourselves, or we're going to lose some games and not separate ourselves. And I think that's going to give us a better indication. The home teams are 41-7, which is like ridiculous. And is it the parity? What's going on? What's going on with teams all over the country? I think it's the most confusing. They say that there's a ton of teams that could win it all. We have 12 teams in the top 50. When you have 12 teams in the top 50, that means you have 12 teams capable of getting in the NCAA tournament, and we're just going to beat the hell out of each other. As far as Indiana goes, big, strong team. They're starting 6'11", 6'10". Smith, who was a power forward last year, is playing the 3 spot. They're rebounding the hell out of the ball. They have not shot the ball real well, but they are rebounding. It kind of reminds me of some of my early teams. And yet they have 4 players in double figures, so they have good balance, just nobody real big. Freshman, Trace Jackson, a kid we recruited hard, is averaging 14 and 8, is having a hell of a freshman year. I think he's one of the best freshmen in the league. Justin Smith is a guy that's a senior that has really played well, averaging 12 points and 5 rebounds. He's good defensively. He's a great offensive rebounder. And Joey Brunk, the transfer, at 6'11", he's scoring 8, 9 points and getting 7, 8 rebounds. So you got a lot of guys between that 12 and 7 range as far as points, and a lot of guys in that 6, 7, 8 range as far as rebounds. The guys that have killed us, Devontae Green and Durham, the last couple of years, are still guys that are in double figures, probably 2 of their best shooters. And this is one of the better teams in the country, getting to the free throw line 26 times a game. So they're getting a lot of dribble penetration with their guards. I think guys are helping. I think that's why they become, besides being real big, they become a good offensive rebounding team. When you drive the ball like that, you also get fouled more. When you get offensive rebounds, you get fouled more. And so we're going to have to do the job in transition. We have to do the job rebounding the ball and defending without fouling. So topsy-turvy, man, as far as, I don't know if you guys have any idea where all the teams are in the league. I sure as hell don't, but I think it's going to, get a little, after this week, you'll get a little bit of a better idea. Not about Michigan State, really, about the whole conference, if you ask me.
Now it sounds like you guys are going straight from Indiana to Minnesota over the weekend. What can that do for a team as far as, chemistry, cohesion, spending how much time?
Yeah, it's a pretty close team. I'll be honest with you, some of it has to do with Cash. We're just trying to get him. It's been a tough couple of games for him, and of no surprise, meaning we know there, and maybe just getting away from some of the stuff and try to get out of the limelight and just kind of be one of the fellas, as Irvin Johnson used to say. That was one of the reasons. The other one was the quick turnaround. We felt like we'd be spending a lot of time in the plane. The third one was, we're missing very few classes on Friday. Friday's a day. So it all worked out where we thought a little team time, get guys away where it's just us and them. They're hearing and seeing so many things, and everybody, we just thought it would be the right situation. You don't get many of these opportunities, so we are going from Indiana right up to Minnesota. We'll practice up there at the Timberwolves place, I think, or at the U. Try to do a little something Friday with the team, and I think it's going to work out well. As you know, if you win the game, it was probably one of the greatest decisions in the history of mankind, and if you lose the game, I'll be the dumbest SOB in the history of mankind. So it's going to be feast or famine. But for me, win or lose, I think it was the right decision. My staff brought it up to me. I thought it was a great idea, and we were able to do it.
I know the experience isn't what you expected it to be with Josh and now Kyle out, but when the road games are at such a premium, do you feel like you have at least a little bit of advantage that your two best guys are really experienced guys with Cassius and Xavier that have been through a lot of this stuff and can maybe stand some of those?
Yeah, except one of them, Cash is struggling a little bit right now, but I'd say yeah, but usually you don't do it. It's like, again, feast or famine. We got two with a lot of experience, one with a little bit of experience, and seven with really none. I don't look at age or grade. I look at experience. And, other than Aaron, Cassius, and Xavier, and Aaron had half the year, I just feel like this is the youngest team I've ever had. So we went back and looked, and, we had the year in 2002, and we had the year, I think it was Neitzel's senior year, when we were pretty young and lost some people, but we had a Travis Walton, or we had a leader that really led too, and in 02 we had a couple of guys that was probably the worst, and ironically those were the two worst years we've had in the 25 years as far as losses. So this has been different than I thought it was going to be, for a lot of reasons, because those two, and still hoped Hauser would have been there. But it's also been good to watch some guys step up. I mean, that last game, I didn't think was Cash's, I thought it was one of his worst games, if I was to be honest about it. And yet we were up 20-some points. So that means some other guys are starting to grow a little bit, and hopefully we're getting a little better. But I don't know. You hope that helps you. But we're still awfully young in a lot of ways.
Aaron, he had the struggles at Purdue. When a guy goes back to his home state, especially the out-of-state guys, how do you coach them down? I know Nick had the stuff at Ohio State. How do you keep them in check?
I like the Knicks when I look back. I like the Adrian Paynes when I look back. I like the Gary Harrises when I look back, because that was a big thing for a lot of reasons. In some cases, they weren't recruited by those schools, like it is for Aaron. In some cases, it was just going back home. What's a little different now, and I think it's happening all over, is there's just not the, it's okay to be mad at someone for not recruiting, and that motivates you. And it, I didn't picture that, like Indiana's a team that beat us twice. Revenge, it's not in the, doesn't seem to be as powerful in the new millennial way of looking at things. It is for me, but the damn NCAA won't let me play. So I hope Aaron is more jacked, and sometimes it seems like we get a little more cool and casual, but I can't blame anything on Purdue, on Aaron Henry. I got to blame that on Tom Izzo. I mean, we just did not play good.
You have a very talented team, but you could make the argument your most talented player isn't playing in Joey. You can make that argument. I'm just curious, what does it say, the way he's been engaged, the way you've been able to build a relationship, how he's coaching in practice, and what it means that he's not mentally checked out?
Yeah, I absolutely, it is the right question, because, you go through guys and their redshirt years are difficult for people, especially a guy like him who didn't play a senior year of high school because of the injury. Now he's sitting out this year, so in the last 3 years he's only played 1 year of basketball. But this kid is going to be a special player. He gets it. He has as good a basketball IQ as the Valentines. The Magics, the Cassius Winstons. He has a very high basketball IQ, and probably the best part, is his shooting. But he is an incredible passer, and so he comes upstairs, watches a little film on whoever we want him to be, and he'll go into practice. If it's a left-hander, he'll start shooting left-handed. If it's a right-hander, he'll start shooting right-handed. If it's a post guy, he'll go in the post. If it's a perimeter guy, he'll go to the perimeter. We sit there and marvel sometimes that he just shot that left-handed, but it was an 18-foot shot, and so he has been, he's a little too quiet for me yet. I'm going to break him out of that before I'm done with him. But he has superseded what I thought he'd be, and he's really, we said he had to get stronger. We said he's got to learn to guard people on the perimeter, and he's really working on that. So I think, like we always tell red shirts, once you get past Christmas, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and he's making the most of it. I think he's really making a lot of his redshirt year, and that's encouraging.
Tom, Gabe Brown seems to take some huge strides with shot selection and discipline there, and then the rebounding and a knack for that. Can you just get into where you see him as a player now and where he's headed a little bit?
I try to compare him to a Morris Peterson. What was he like at the same age? And the funny part is he's ahead of where Morris was at the same age, and then Morris really took off, and Morris got his defense down. He started rebounding the daylight side of the ball, and he became a more consistent shooter. And Gabe is making all those strides as a sophomore, I think. Not there yet, but maybe you brought up the best word: discipline. Disciplined shooter, disciplined defender, disciplined rebounder. Getting more disciplined in everything he's done, and probably, I think my staff would agree, he's probably spent the most time here. I was watching a game last night with Baylor, and they were talking about one of their players who was a Division III player 2 years ago, and they just said how much time he spends in the gym, and it's such a understated. We all brag about it one way or another, and yet when you do that means you're insulting somebody else. But some kids are self-motivated, some people are self-motivated, and they take their job and they put everything into their job, and some don't. And he's been one since the day he got here, has been a worker. He's got to learn to watch more film. That's the next step, because if he watches more film, he'll process things a little easier. His basketball IQ isn't as high as those other guys, but he's kind of growing into it, and he's got some toughness to him. He's got length. He's got athleticism, and winning is important, and playing well is important. So I love Gabe Brown. He's just one of those guys that get frustrated with a couple of mental mistakes here, forgetting to do this there, but I always know that his heart's in the right place, so it's easy to coach Gabe. She needs a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Going down to Bloomington, I know that in your 25th year, I remember way back when it was, Bob Knight being the dean of the coaches at that point. If you kept in touch with him over the past few years, and especially since you moved back to Bloomington?
I haven't been in touch with him like on the phone and that, but when I see him, Bob's always been great to me. He was great to me. The first day I got the job, he called me. He was, to this day, I think, the time we beat him, and called me in and told me that we have a chance to win the national championship. Will go down as one of my favorite Bob Knight stories, because he also told me how to deal with all you guys and how to help the players deal with you. And how to stay focused on the task, and really, and he had a good team then too. But him and Judd were good friends, and I consider Bob Knight not a great friend like that because I don't get to spend as much time with him, but a guy that I've always and still do respect, and I think he respected our program, and that meant more to me than anything else because I value his opinion on things a lot, and I'm glad he's back. I like everyone else, I think in sports, I still hope that someday they can mend that wound because the building should be named after him, the town should be named after him, the floor should be named after him. What he did for basketball, both at Indiana, in the Big Ten, his records I don't think will ever be broken. And so for that, I'm still a big Bob Knight fan.
This was my original question, but going off that a little bit, what do you then admire, what did you admire about his coaching style? I mean, I'm sure it's a pretty good idea of what you liked, but what about his coaching style?
Yeah, I appreciated that he both had the strength and courage to throw a chair. I can't do that. But no, I just like that what he stood for to me was right. Was it always handled perfectly? I mean, people say I don't handle it perfectly, but I think, I still think for the most part, and this is what I always get a kick out of with any of us, is those players were Bob Knight guys for life. And, still it's the Quinn Buckners of the world that, still feel the same. I talked to Isaiah Thomas when he was here for the Piston thing, and there is an appreciation. I mean, when they still call him Coach, it isn't even Coach Knight. Coach kind of says it all. Like he's the one guy they can call Coach, and I respect that. I respect what he stood for with academics. I respected what he stood for in how he handled the NABC and all the things early on in his career. And I respected that he got frustrated on some things. I really do respect that because I do the same thing. And we don't always handle it exactly the right way. And I don't know if he did, and I don't know if I do. But I still think that we're making a big mistake if accountability isn't the biggest thing that we all have to deal with, And I think there was accountability, and I respect that a lot. Second part of the question, Hondo.
This is about Rocket and what you want to see out of him in these games on the road after, especially what happened against Wisconsin.
I went down to Detroit yesterday. I was doing some recruiting on Martin Luther King Day, and I was in Detroit. And, it's getting back to, Detroit is getting back to like it was. There's getting to be more players and more programs. There's some people down there trying to do some great things to bring that back. And when I was down there, people would ask me about Rocket, and God, he's just starting to play better, And I said, well, where you been? He was out a month. And it's the most screwed up thing that I hate about our society. I sometimes hate about you guys, and sometimes I hate about my own family because they're not in practice every day. They don't realize that there is a process to 99% of the kids. There's the LeBrons and Magics that could probably be out a month and come back and be just about as good, or Michaels. But for the most part, kids, when you get hurt as a freshman and you miss time, I think what he's doing now, he's been fun to coach. Have I dealt with him a little differently? Probably, knowing what he had been through and what he had to adjust to academically, athletically. But this kid has been great. Did he take some bad shots early? Yes, he did. Did I tell him? Yes, I did. Did he like it? No, he didn't. did he start to see it when I showed it to him on film? Yes, he did, and it's been fun to watch him grow, and now in practice he's shooting it better, and now in practice he's starting to defensively starting to understand the schemes of things. But as far as one-on-one defense, he's very good, and he can guard a lot of people. So I think as Rocket grows, it's going to really improve our team. And we haven't even seen yet the dunking Rocket, the athletic Rocket. I mean, he's still not there, if you want the truth. So don't, question why. Just understand why. Why is because as a freshman, he missed a lot of time. Even in the summer, he missed some time. And let the process continue, because he's doing a good job of it. And it's just so funny listening to people talk like, he should be this already, and they don't even know, So I'm very pleased with the progress of Rocket. Never totally happy, because I want it to be more, and I need it to be more, especially with the injuries we've had. But he has made some serious progress, and I think he's starting to get some confidence, and players love him. I think he loves everything about it. So it's been really good.
One or two more. Tom, is there a role player on this team that maybe even not only from us, the media, but even inside your coach's office that isn't getting recognized?
We're starting to. Foster has been an interesting kid, because he's. We all know what he did in high school. We all know the adjustments he had to make, and strength and weight and all these things, and then just adjusting to size and speed on a regular basis, and not getting as many shots and things like that. But he is really starting to come on. Practice has been really good. He's probably one of Cash's favorite guys, because Cash likes when he can play both positions a little bit. And he's getting better defensively. And so I think he's one guy, because he can make shots, that is coming. And then, with those bigs, I mean, it's just a combination of guys. Last night, Julius was unbelievable in practice after we got mad at him for not going hard enough, and he looked like a whole different player. I feel like none of them, Kithier was sicker than a dog last game and fought through it and played, and Malik does some really good things and then some not, But if you think about it, if the guys were in place that were here and we thought would be here, those guys, might have redshirted one or two of them. They didn't come in McDonald's All-Americans, and everybody wants them to be McDonald's All-Americans. And so I think they're all making progress. They've just been thrown into the fire, and when you're thrown into the fire, and yet you're not a full-time guy into the fire, like Gabe was thrown in this year when Aaron went down and Rocket went down, and he was thrown in, and he's made adjustments slowly and surely, but got thrown in at the right time. It was after all those big games. We had some games that were more winnable, and he could kind of learn on the fly. For poor Rocket, he got thrown in when we're playing, Kentucky and Duke every night at Seton Hall, which, by the way, has been a big win, as Rutgers has been a huge win, I don't know if you guys have done it, because we're talking about, the first thing I started with is, where are we? But I'll bet you when we beat Rutgers, here's what I got told by, the great knowledgeable people, not media, just fans in general. Geez, you only beat Rutgers by 8 or 10. Geez, that was a tougher game than it should have been, And to be honest with you, it shows you how dumb people are.
You glad you're not going to the rack this year?
Glad I'm not going to the rack this year. Yeah, but not surprised. Not surprised. I mean, I did call it early, but I had one of them as my team. But when they lost Amaru, I thought that would hurt him some. And in fact, I talked to Steve that day, and I've told you also that I think he's one of the better coaches in this league. But sometimes addition by subtraction, and some of those other guys have really stepped up, and so, but some of those guys have started for 2 years when they went through all that, and now they're reaping some of the benefits, Seton Hall win seemed like a good win. You know, that big kid still isn't back. And they're what, 8th, 7th, 9th, whatever they are in the league, 10th, or in the country. So there are some good wins that you don't realize, and yet there's going to be, I'm telling you, when I said 5 early, and I said some say 6, I could see 5 or 6 still winning this league, unfortunately. And that's not to prepare you, that's the truth. Last one?
Last one.
Only because I got to go to a luncheon.
Speaking of the bigs, what have you wanted to see from Marcus Bingham lately? Obviously, he's had some fluctuation. But
Yeah, you know what we've decided. We've tried to spend a lot of time with Marcus the last few days since we had some time, and he hasn't shot as well from the 3, and he's a good shooter, but he sometimes takes shots that he's taking them too quick, and so we showed him some film of his shots. We showed him some film of his practices. He's got to realize that, just because you could shoot the ball, hell, Mex can shoot the ball. It's make the ball that matters, Shooting it doesn't matter. And yet, we're not getting him the ball enough on the post because he's got good post moves. So that's the happy medium that we're trying to hit right now. Listen, we want you to shoot more, but we want you to shoot, certain kind of shots and not holding his game back. If I let him shoot all those threes that he's missing in practice, you're gonna miss him in the games. And it's another frustrating part as a coach. I've heard people, well, you got him there as a shooter. You recruited him as a shooter. Now, what guy on Dialaclue thought that, he could shoot? But I didn't recruit him as a shooter. I recruited him because he was 6'10 and a half. He had a 7'4" wingspan. And I think the potential as the weight gain, and a lot of the weight he gained now, he's lost 10 pounds because that's what happens during the year, for everybody but us. But he is making progress. His rebounds per minute are very good. His stamina is another thing that has to improve. That goes with strength, weight, all the other things. So again, if it was a perfect world, Marcus would have probably redshirted last year. It's just that's illegal now because that looks like an insult to a human being when you do that. Even though Wisconsin, I think, had 9 guys that redshirted. But that was a societal problem. It was almost like an insult to him to think about redshirting because then everybody would think he's not good enough. And so those are the problems that we deal with now, and there's a lot of them. But Marcus I think he's in a pretty good place right now, and I think he's making some improvements. He's figured out what he's got to get better at, and he's figured out what he should do and shouldn't do, and I'm pleased. But like Rocket, just because Rocket's a freshman, Marcus played 3 minutes a game in 24 games last year. That is rookie status in every way, shape, or form. And so it's going to take a little time, but I like the progress we're making. It's never fast enough for the coach or fast enough for a contender. And when somebody is crazy enough to say, well, other people are playing freshmen, yeah, they're playing freshmen that are McDonald's guys. And right now, mine are working to be that. And so, and probably got stuck in something a little earlier than I would have liked them to. Not they would have liked me. They all want to start as, 12th graders. But as I would like them to. And I think they're all making great progress. It's just that all of a sudden when you're 6-1, everybody talks about winning a championship again, including me. So you try to get them to play at that level. I know there's going to be a process. I think fans don't understand that there is a process to it, and that's what we're going to keep trying to work on. So big week for us. One of those weeks, if you can win a game or two, you start separating. If you lose a game or two, the season's not even thought to be over because everybody's going to beat the hell out of everybody the way I see it right now. And that's going to make it. When I heard Seth Greenberg, I think, say 50 teams could win the national championship, I said, wow, my old buddy's going senile. And I thought for 10 seconds, and I said, he's right. They probably are right now. And that doesn't, nobody likes dynasties. They get sick of the Patriots. They get, sick of the Warriors until you don't have a dynasty. And then, when you want to see your best teams up there, and especially when we're one of them, I want to see that. But this year is an off-the-charts year, if you ask me. So I'm going to try to enjoy some of the ride, go to my luncheon. I got to speak. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Good job.